On the Brian Kilmeade Show, Brian Kilmeade has knitted himself a cashmere coat of glory. He has draped it across his manly shoulders, and he is traipsing about the land, making new friends, creating new memories, and he will share with you his stories when he returns next week. For now, for this brief, fleeting, wonderful, and nearly perfect moment, you have me. And I have Emily Compagno. She is the co-host of Outnumbered on the Fox News Channel. It airs noon o'clock in the East, 9 o'clock a.m. on the West, where my brother and sister-in-law have their coffee. And they spend every Oregon morning with Emily Compagno, who is a ray of sunshine and hope in these dark and cloudy times, these rough seas. She is a steady hand on the tiller. I don't know if tillers are on boats.
I'm a deckhand, a sunny deckhand.
She's a sunny deckhand. She's swapping the poop deck with a smile. And I am so happy to have her in my life and on this show right now. Emily Compagno, welcome to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Same, buddy.
That's right.
How fun.
This is
amazing.
amazing.
It's a takeover. It's a bestie takeover of Kilmeade Show. We're never going to be asked back, but for now, it's glorious.
That's all that matters.
And I thought about the camp song as you were saying that. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold.
One is bronze. We ignore them.
Copper's getting expensive. You might be stolen if you're copper. If you're gold, buy gold. Roslyn
Capital. I love gold and silver. I asked my beloved if we should get a safe. So maybe it will encourage us to buy gold and silver.
And the answer, dear public, is he said yes, and they did get a safe. So everything in Kennedy's home is locked up.
Tightly and brightly. Some people who should be locked up are filled with paralyzing rage. And I say it's paralyzing rage because they're really, really mad and they cannot function in the rest of their lives because of their anger. So what are they doing? They're taking to the streets in Minneapolis and they're smashing watermelons. Listen to this irrational rage-a-thon.
It was everything I could have ever dreamed and hoped for.
What were you thinking about when you were smashing? What did you smash?
The patriarchy.
What were you smashing the anger out for today?
Everything, like our rights being taken away slowly but surely.
Many trans friends that are afraid to even walk outside.
You, Trump! You! That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's where they are. So it's video of people like angry, shouting, smashing watermelons like they're human heads. Is this the most productive way to spend your time when you are maybe politically, philosophically opposed to the sitting president of the United States who's already survived 2 assassination attempts?
I'm going with a hard no on that.
Are you? You're not a maybe? I thought you might be a maybe.
Yeah, I thought about it for not any time at all and came to the conclusion that this is a concrete no. My first thought whenever I hear this dribble is just get a job, right? Get a job. Be productive in some way. The luxury.
Get an exhausting job.
Right?
So you don't have time to think about this stuff and indulge your little whims and make yourself mad all day long.
Yes. It is a luxury to skip down the street and purchase a watermelon and then beat it and then claim that you are smashing the patriarchy when, by the way, at least on the West Coast, smashing is a different synonym for a verb. So it's a synonym for a different verb that we can't talk about on air. So they just sound ridiculous to my mind.
Is
saying
that like procreation?
Smashing. Yes.
Yes.
So they're smashing the patriarchy.
So
awesome.
we had mashing.
Wear protection.
That was our euphemism for kissing a boy on the weekend. Oh, yeah. Mashing. We mashed.
That's cute.
Did you mash with Gavin? Yeah, we mashed.
So I just think that this is something that, as we see, it's trending. It's for clicks. It's for likes. It's for the airtime. And it's not productive, to your point. So if you really have an issue, if you feel you cannot walk on the streets and you're transsexual, why is that? Is it because Minneapolis doesn't support law and order? Is it because the prosecutors don't actually prosecute crimes? Was there a hate crime that we've seen? I haven't heard of one. So all of these,
was there an unhinged, mentally ill, homeless drug addict who maybe attacked someone for the way they looked? And in a city that is super lax on bail and prosecution, maybe that person was given a desk ticket and encouraged to go back out and reoffend and hurt or spit on or taunt another person.
Plus, when you're doing it in public like that, it's so obvious that you're attention seeking, because then what happens? Is it the hardworking city employees who come and clean it up? Right. And then in that case, isn't that sort of exhibiting that same caste system that these pretend ragists are against? Because that's what's happening. I don't think that they're probably cleaning up afterwards. So someone else is.
I smashed the patriarchy.
And I ate the watermelon. Also, the fact that you and I buy whole watermelons, not halves anymore.
No way.
And you and I cut them up and we eat them every weekend. So to me, this is also just straight up waste.
Yeah.
Just waste, fraud, and abuse of the watermelons.
So talking about other people whose brains have been scrambled, what do you make of the Texas Democrats? Because this has been a pretty massive story. They thought that they would leave the Texas state legislature and go to Illinois, because I guess that's what you do when you're in a Lone Star pickle. And now they're under threat of arrest. Are you talking about this today on Outnumbered?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Come on, feel the noise, Illinois. So I have that T-shirt, by the way, everyone. I used to live in Decatur. Yeah, I think it's
Decatur. I don't even know her.
I think it's again, this is stunting masquerading as statesmanship. So these guys are claiming that there's a threat to democracy, and yet they are totally absconding away from their duty legislatively to actually get something done in the building. So they're claiming that the worst thing possible can happen to the republic, to democracy. And so their answer is to flee their elected job, to flee their constitutional duty. I think it's very apt that the governor is calling for the arrest and also for the prosecution of bribery if indeed they're taking money to do this done. And the irony, Democrat Texas Ann Johnson 2 days ago now, or yesterday in the morning, was on a show claiming, well, this is the very last tactic. Times are extraordinary. This is the only thing we have left. To which the host reminded her, well, you did this in 2021 too. And weird, then it didn't work either.
Yeah.
And so then Democrat Texas Congressman Ann Johnson sort of flustered around and came up with a totally inapplicable football analogy, and then said, well, it's up to Texans. They have to know, does their governor serve President Trump or does he serve Texans? So it all comes back to a pushed narrative where it's either Trump is orange man bad or and anything we do is positive. But at the end of the day, they are totally annihilating any respect afforded to them or any honor of that office. And I hope all of them are primaried.
If they serve Texans, is it really best to fight in another state if you are trying to protect the rights of your constituents?
No, that's the point. They're fleeing to this bestie's house only for the TikTok likes. And some of the criticism of the gerrymandering, when you actually get into it, is sort of humorous to me too, because it talks about how, well, conservative Hispanic Democrats are now going to outweigh the Democrat Hispanics along with white voters. And it's like, well, that's what we saw in 2024. So essentially what the application of this gerrymandering, and some critics have noted it could be a lot uglier, meaning they recognize that actually this isn't some type of terrible, horrible, racist thing, because it was racist to begin with to assume that all Hispanics vote Democrat. It's racist from the beginning to assume people of certain colors vote in monolithic ways. And so here, we saw that obliterated in the actual election, and then we're seeing that put to application here. So I think California has a lot to answer for also. But
they're threatening to do this to an even greater degree in California and do whatever they can. But they've already lost. And I was thinking about that because, Gavin Newsom's like, yeah, we're going to do the same in California. You mess with the bull, you'll get the horns. But they already lost a House seat because of depopulation, because people are fleeing the state. And he's making it less and less attractive. That's another thing I want to talk about, which is so shocking to me, is Kamala Harris. And it's not shocking that she's running away from a fight, because she's not a very good fighter, but that her excuse for not running for governor of California is the system is broken. What system is she talking about? Is it the broken system that Gavin Newsom will hand her, that has been an invitation for people to flee from California to the point where it's almost impossible to get a U-Haul out of the state? Is it the system that the Democrat Party in California has constructed over the last few decades, giving their party the supermajority? So what is it about the broken system? Is it because she lost the presidency? Because the system was so broken, it just inserted someone on the Democrat presidential ticket instead of having a quick primary? What system is she talking about?
I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, she's unintellectual and she's not intellectually honest, because the reality is, you're right, she benefited. Whatever broken system she's talking about, she directly benefited.
Amen.
And I don't think the system is broken at all, actually, because that was the whole point, that the voters took back the power and they responded to the option of a totally inept and frankly corrupt Democrat Party and potential president at the helm. And they said, no way, not on our watch. It was a very effective, I thought, message to her. So when the Democrat Party is sort of, again, conducting this like autopsy, I'm like, well, I don't even think you need an autopsy, man. Just look in the mirror. I think it's pretty obvious that everything you guys stood for ideologically, in addition to the blatant corruption of installing a presidential candidate against any voters' will whatsoever, it didn't work. It totally failed. And I think too that this whole like okay corralling that she is in the middle of now with the president, where allegedly they're sort of threatening to like release either Palin-esque moments from Kamala, or she's threatening to sort of expose President Biden in terms of his mental unfitness. I mean, that to me just also shows it was never about leadership. It's just about reputation protection. They are trying to manage their reputations. And if that's true too, as we are discussing how she is completely intellectually dishonest and also not that bright and totally lying as well. So now you're telling me, well, if he was so unfit, why did you stay quiet? And Biden, if you knew Kamala was an empty vessel, then why'd you
pick her in the first place?
Why'd you elevate her? He told us she was the future of the Democrat Party.
Yes.
So you're either lying then or you're lying now.
And he was a one-term president who was going to act as a bridge.
Right. Well, and now he's just a walking, talking crypt keeper.
Yeah.
It is frightening. Both of them are frightening.
She walked all over him, but she didn't have the skill set to meet her ambitions in order to make a convincing case to voters why she should be the one who's negotiating with Ukraine and Russia. Why she is the one who is having discussions with Thailand and Cambodia. Why she should be the one to have conversations about tariffs with the EU. Can you imagine her in any of these positions?
No, because we were made aware, for example, of at a certain point during her vice presidency, when a bunch of intelligence community reports and briefs were put in front of her. And the only comment she had was apparently how an officer had referred to a female leader or a female subject in the report. So, and then that started this whole, here's how you have to refer to females and whatnot. So what I learned from that as an American citizen, I mean, not that it needed to be underscored, but yes, was that our vice president was intellectually totally ill-equipped to handle any modicum of role in the vice presidency. And usually people say, oh, the vice president, that really does nothing. No, it's a big, important role, actually. It's a very important role. And she was really close to the actual presidency as we saw our commander-in-chief totally decline. So to learn that someone who was so unintelligent, she didn't pass the bar on the first time. We've seen how she communicates. We now learn how she takes constructive intelligence community intel and just DEIs it. I mean, that's absolutely horrifying to me how close we came to total annihilation, because that's what would have happened if she had assumed the leadership position.
Very quickly before I let you go, because I know you have to go right to the outnumbered couch. Who was a worse pick for vice president, Kamala Harris or Tim Walz?
Oh my gosh, that's the hardest would you rather of all time. Gosh, I'm going to say her. He is a blowhard, but I think he has like one more brain cell than she does. I think he's a little tiny bit smarter.
Okay,
than
here's
she is.
an even better would you rather. Would you rather be stuck in a car every single weekday morning on a 2-hour commute with Kamala Harris or be married to Tim Walz?
Oh gosh! I can't. Don't make me do it. Don't make me pick. I mean, I think I would have to pick Kamala, obviously, unless I could divorce Tim Walz immediately. But I know that's not the rules of Would You Rather. You have to accept the thing. So I would say Kamala Harris, and then I would just slash the tires and take the bus. And on that note,
on that workaround, go have a phenomenal show. We'll be watching you on the Outnumbered couch. You are the best in the whole world.
I thank thee.
And I thank thee in kind and embrace your gratitude.
My gold friend.
That is Emily Compagno, co-host of Outnumbered. You can see her on The Five. You can see her on Gutfeld, the true crime podcast on Fox News Podcast. Get it all, Emily Compagno, everywhere and always. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show. More in moments. I'm Kennedy.
This is the key that really blows the whole Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Comey narrative out of the water, where they say that Russia aspired to help Trump get elected, or that Russia hacked the election in favor of Donald Trump, really trying to discredit President Trump's win.
Yes.
And give a big middle finger to the American people who had just voted him into office.
That would be our Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And she has been making a lot of waves by declassifying some of the documents regarding Russiagate and its origins from back in 2016. And, like the promise of economic prosperity under socialism, this was all a big, giant lie. How did it happen, and how can we keep it from happening again? There is one journalist who has been deeply diving into all of this subject matter for quite a few years. Matt Taibbi, he is Racket News editor-in-chief. He has a phenomenal Substack that you should subscribe to. And he has been phenomenal at getting to the bottom of all of this stuff. And Matt Taibbi, welcome to the Brian Kilmeade Show. It's your friend Kennedy.
Hey, Kennedy, how's it going?
It's going good. So this stuff, it really does scare me, because you see how different elements of the federal government can come together to just try and railroad someone out of the presidency, or railroad them right into prison, as was the case of George Papadopoulos and others. Where did you first stand on Russiagate when we started to hear about it in 2016? I'm guessing you were still writing for Rolling Stone then?
I was, yeah. But my immediate reaction to the story was that it sounded wrong. I wrote a story in late December of 2016 right away, saying the headline was "Something about this Russia story stinks." Did not make a lot of friends in the business for saying that. And my calculation about this was, this is either the biggest intelligence coup of all time, where the Russians got a Manchurian candidate into the White House, or it's the biggest intelligence fraud of all time on our side. But I could not imagine that the CIA, the FBI, the White House, and everybody in the media could be in on a deception that big. So it took a long time to wrap my head around the whole thing.
So for journalists who had access to more of the facts than maybe you or other skeptics did at the time, were you surprised that the New York Times and the Washington Post ignored some of these red flags that in another time with another subject might have resulted in very different reporting?
Absolutely. I mean, especially the New York Times, which had just been through a terrible reputation-destroying ordeal with the WMD episode, where it was essentially the same story. They were being told by unnamed intelligence community officials that there was evidence of something, but they couldn't see it. They weren't shown what was inside the box. and they went to print with this. And they later had to admit publicly that, they had been, deceived, that there was a national intelligence estimate that was published that suppressed all the dissenting information. They had to report on their own mistakes in that case. And everybody in the business after that thought, well, we can't ever do that again. We can't ever do this huge story where we're told by unnamed people familiar with the matter and not check it. But they did it. They did it all over again. And this one was actually a worse scandal, I would say.
I would tend to agree with you. But, I keep going back to the beginning, and I'm trying to pinpoint what the impetus was. Was it something cooked up by President Obama to make sure that his legacy stayed intact? Was it something that generated from the intelligence community, particularly from John Brennan? So their version of the deep state wouldn't be infringed upon by such an anti-establishment person like Donald Trump? Was it an insurance policy to make sure that Hillary Clinton won? Or was it something else, or a combination of those things?
I think it was a combination of a bunch of things, and there are two key dates to remember, and there are still some gray areas about what exactly happened at those times. The first one is at the end of July in 2016, when the FBI opened its Crossfire Hurricane probe into Donald Trump. Now, the official explanation for this is that an Australian diplomat talked to a Trump aide named George Papadopoulos, who allegedly said something about dirt on Hillary Clinton. That turned out not to be true much later. It now looks, because of the Durham report, like they had significant information much earlier about Russian plans or Russian communiques saying that Hillary Clinton had a plan to sort of vilify Donald Trump by tying him to Russia. It's not clear what happened, but whatever reason it was to start that investigation in the summer of 2016, it wasn't what they said it was. The other one is December 8th, 2016, when Obama suddenly commissioned a new intelligence community assessment that basically said Russia meddled in the election to help Donald Trump specifically. That was new, and we still don't know why he did that.
So that was really interesting. And, I look at that when Obama inserts himself, and that was when everyone underneath Brennan tried to talk him out of it and say that, we don't have enough here to justify what this will, opening the lid on this, what it will unleash into our politics and our media. And Brennan famously said, yes, but it rings true, doesn't it? It's like, well, there's not enough there to ring true. But, looking back at this, did Obama think that if they were able to construct this convincingly, would that undo the results of the election, somehow create a constitutional crisis, and make Hillary Clinton the victor? Was that the point, or was that just to take Trump out of the presidency, do you think?
Well, I don't think we know yet. Obviously, this just went to the grand jury yesterday, and Tulsi Gabbard was pretty adamant that we have to get indictments, and the names that are being bandied about are James Comey, Jim Clapper, and John Brennan, some other folks. But we don't know. We still don't know what the motivation for all this was. What we do know is exactly what you said, which is that the people who were doing the work on this assessment, I think quite rightly, were panicked. They were saying, we can't use this stuff. This is going, this is going to be out there forever, and our careers are going to be ruined if we use phony campaign research to start this. But I think the circumstantial evidence suggests that what this assessment was for was to create the precondition for an investigation of Trump that would lead to an impeachment. I think everything points to that, but we still don't see the full preparations for that in documentation.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, from what you know, will the grand jury have access to more than we have been given that has recently been declassified so far?
Absolutely, yes. They're going to be looking at at a lot of things. I've only had one conversation with somebody about this so far, but there's still an enormous amount of material that has not been released to the public, including the raw interviews that went into the Durham report, the raw interviews that went into the report that Tulsi released by the House Intelligence Committee. There's also an enormous amount of hacked material that we retrieved from the Russians that talks about this Clinton plan to vilify Donald Trump, and we haven't seen those raw materials yet either. There's a lot of speculation about why that was never looked at. The FBI went to great lengths not to look at that material officially. So all of that stuff, I'm assuming, is going to come into play. And the way the investigators are talking suggests to me that they have something that they think is convincing. But again, we can't say that definitively without knowing what it is.
Yeah. And, George Papadopoulos said adamantly the opposite of what the FBI had claimed was the basis for the investigation. And they knew that. They also knew that the Steele dossier was very, very dubious at best, but those were the two hooks that they were willing to hang this investigation on. And, I still go back to Carter Page, who offered to come into the FBI. And, he voluntarily wanted to come in for an interview. And they said no, because they were spying on him. And they were spying on him because the FBI, when they issued the FISA warrant request, didn't tell the judge that Carter Page was working with the CIA, which would have negated the wiretap.
Of course, yeah, no, and that was illegal, and he was criminally convicted. The lawyer that did that was criminally convicted. And look, I think a lot of people on the Democratic side roll their eyes at this and they say, what's the big deal? But think about the comparison between this and Watergate. Watergate was a story about political espionage, bugging the opposition party in the middle of a presidential campaign. And that's what this is. They illegally obtained surveillance authority on the entire Trump world through this FISA. People who don't know how FISA works, it's a multiple hop technology that allows you not only to see the communications of that person, but everybody that Carter Page talked to and everybody that those people talked to. So they got visibility into the whole Trump campaign illegally. And they were leaking phony intelligence, which is as bad as the dirty tricks from the Nixon era. So, and that's just the pre-election behavior.
I would argue that it's worse because of all the entities that were involved. The CIA, the FBI, the DNI, the vice president, the Democratic nominee for president, who was also the former Secretary of State. You didn't have that with Watergate. And, it's a shame that Gate is now tagged on to everything. So we get Russiagate, and it's because of the Watergate Hotel where the break-in was. But this is so much bigger. I wish there were a name for this entire catastrophe that could then be tagged on to every scandal in the future.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And you're right. Watergate, one of the things that was really interesting about Watergate is that it was committed by this group that was inside the White House because they couldn't rely on the CIA or the FBI or these other agencies to do their dirty work for them. Nixon had to rely on people inside his own White House because it was so unthinkable to ask agencies to do this kind of stuff.
Because they knew it was wrong and they wouldn't do it. Unlike Obama's CIA and Obama's FBI, which were essentially lapdogs using all of their heft and their surveillance capabilities that we knew we were wrong since the Snowden era. And this is what civil libertarians were warning against when we learned about all of that stuff.
And that was a frustrating aspect of it for me, Kennedy, was, I was always a big proponent of civil liberties, at Rolling Stone. FISA and, the national security letters that the FBI used and all the other tools that came out of the war on terror. I always was warning. I said, this is way too much power to give to the federal government. They can spy on anybody without almost any oversight whatsoever. And there's going to be an enormous temptation to use this for political reasons. But as soon as Donald Trump entered the picture, civil libertarians forgot all of their objections to these issues. They forgot that they didn't like FISA. They forgot that they didn't like this enhanced international surveillance state. But you see what happens when people are allowed to use this and there's no oversight. This is what happens, and that's why it's so important to litigate this thing all the way through.
Jimmy Failla joins me now. He is the host of Fox News Saturday Night on the Fox News Channel, 10 p.m. Eastern. You have to watch it every single Saturday if you know what's good for you. Mm-hmm. He's also the host of Fox Cross America with Jimmy Failla, weekdays from noon to 3 on Fox News Radio.
Hot damn.
You're almost as busy as Kilmeade.
Yeah, that's why I'm out of breath. I was making paninis on the third floor again. No, I do everything here. I used to trim Geraldo's mustache. A lot of people don't know that.
It's sad. So when he left, was there a hole in your heart?
Well, it opened up a gap in my schedule with the mustache thing. But luckily, I have a few Italian women down the block. I can't stop it. What's going on, Jimmy? Why are you taking shots at random ladies?
They've been so good to you. So we have I have a friend who complains about his partner, his female partner, a lot. And he's like, yeah, she's always doing these horrible things and saying mean things, and it's really tough. And, it's like I think she might be stepping out on me. And so I said to him, I don't think I like her. Oh. And he said, he got really offended. He goes, she always says really nice things about you. And I was like, then don't tell me that stuff.
Yeah, that's the point. Because they do that familial thing. Where it's like, hey, he's an a-hole, but he's our a-hole.
Yeah, but it's like, I'm being a good friend.
Of course.
It's like, I'm trying to protect you.
And they're leading the witness here, In my experience, okay, because I guess we're married, Jenny and I married 19 years.
Oh, that's exciting. What are you going to do for your 20th?
Ooh.
And please don't say get a divorce.
No, stop it.
That would be
we're way past that.
Ordinary.
Yeah, that's very average. I mean, she did get me a Tinder account for our 15th, so she's got to get creative for the 20th. I don't know what she's going to get.
It was Grindr. Well, at least be honest with the audience.
A gal can dream. Anyway, 20, we probably go back to Italy, eat some carbs.
That's right.
I loved it over there.
Is that where you honeymooned?
What? No, we I know nobody likes a show off, but we honeymooned in Chicago at a Cubs game.
Oh, that's cool. That's actually great.
Yeah, we got married in Salina, Ohio.
Yeah, because back then Chicago wasn't like a hellhole of crime and whizzing bullets.
No, back then like a stolen base was a guy stole second. Now a stolen base is like someone's lost an instrument. They've been mugged on the train. Totally different animal. But we went to Chicago. We drank old style beer. We watched the Cubs. And our superpower, this is true, because since you invoked your friend and that sneaking suspicion they have about their partner. Jenny and I actually relax each other. It's the opposite. I've met a lot of people that it's like so exciting.
Your wife is extraordinary.
Cool. Yeah, Jenny's great. She has whoever denied her the self-worth she should have is a hero to me.
No, but
I don't know who she dated before, but but yeah, she's fantastic.
Can I tell a story that she told me about something you did recently?
Oh, no.
That in any other marriage would be unforgivable?
The Viking helmet? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
The passports.
The passports? I don't know, but I don't know that I'm guilty of this.
You threw away your family's passports and your son's birth certificate.
Yeah. Hey, at least she's not married to a shady guy. Does a shady guy forget where the passports are? Never. Okay.
You didn't forget where they were. They were sitting there on a desk and you threw them away.
Okay, let me jump in here. Okay. Jenny, for I believe it was like Christmas, we just got a dumpster. Like for real, and just wanted to throw stuff out.
It sounds like the most satifying and wonderful thing in the world.
It was amazing. We chucked everything. Okay, the neighbors are still mad at us about their daughter, but they'll find her. It's not a big landfill. What are we doing here? But the point is,
she's almost 4.
She knows her way around. I mean, come on. Anyway, we're throwing out everything imaginable. Apparently, our passports were in a folder. That may or may not have wound up in a bag. But here's the issue. No, I stand my ground on this, and I'm sad I wasn't there to defend myself. Jenny was putting things she wanted to keep into a white garbage bag.
Okay.
No. You know what goes into a white garbage bag? Things you're getting rid of. So I apparently put the folder in the wrong white garbage bag instead of the we're going to keep it white garbage bag. But who announces they're keeping something by putting it in a white garbage bag? So that would be my end of the argument.
So my question is, you were in such a rush to get rid of the evidence. Why did you get the dumpster in the first place? What were you trying to get rid of?
Well, not my real passports. I mean, I got like 3 or 4 you shouldn't know about, but no,
But
it was just
anyone
stuff.
who's listening knows how hard it is to get a passport.
Very hard.
And ever since COVID, there is such a lag. So if you're going on a trip, you really have to take your boarding pass and receipts and to another state to get a passport if you actually need an emergency passport.
It's that bad because the expediter here is like, well, it's a
Expediter.
I know, but they're like, well, it's $1,000. We can have it for you in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what?
I had to pay for the expediter because when you turn 16, you get a 10-year passport. So one child had a 5-year, one had a 10-year. The 5-year expired, so we had to get one in order to go to the Bahamas, which we're not going to miss a trip to the Bahamas.
No, you're not.
No, this is back before they were, just snatching tourists off of boats and giving people antifreeze in their alcohol bottles in the fridge.
No fun.
No. So, and it cost like $750.
Is it that? That's crazy.
And still didn't get it like that day or the next day. It still took about a week.
Wow. That's a racket. Listen, I've been on both sides of this, but when I needed an expedited passport, I did have to go to Connecticut. I did. Jenny has since gotten me those forms that you fill out, and now you've got to go get them stamped and the picture and everything like that. I just haven't done it yet because I have no international plans at the moment, but it'll get worked out.
No, just wait till the last minute.
It's the way we like to do it in the Failla house.
Like my sexy teenage boyfriend says, if you wait till the last minute, it only takes you a minute.
Amen.
I went to, so this is not an advertisement. I went to FedEx when I needed a passport, and I got it in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just did sort of the expedited, and they took my picture there, and I have taken horrible passport photos until the most recent one, and I look like a sexy baby. Yeah, it is the most beautiful picture, and the guy had this big clunky camera, and I'm like, this is going to be awful.
Yeah.
I'm going to look like Rocky Dennis again.
And you wound up taking a glamour shot?
Yes.
You got a hot passport.
And now when I go around the airport, when I land in another country, I'm like, that's me. That's me. And they're like, sir, that is not you.
Do you know what I bet? That's hilarious. Sir. Do you know what? It's actually a win for me, addition by subtraction. My other passport, they used a photo from when I used to have bleach blonde hair. I looked like Lance Bass. Because I was like 30 pounds lighter and I had bleach blonde hair.
Oh, that makes sense because you met him at a rest stop.
Well,
so.
that's what, the rent don't pay itself. But yeah, I had a lot of flirty customizations back in the day. I remember in Jamaica because I showed up with that bleach blonde teased bang hair. And everybody was you're right, a little frisky. So maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Maybe I'm,
So that's the picture you're replacing is Lance Bass.
Yeah, I get to be myself now. It's the chubby before model who's flying into town to eat all your croissants. Less threatening.
So someone asked me, how much gel does Jimmy use in his hair?
Oh, it's a good question. I use clay. It's a sculpt clay. I don't use much. I get out of the shower, right, with wet hair, put a dab on my fingertip, and then either rub the hands and just bang it out.
Nice.
So it doesn't lose its form because my hair's short. It's kind of trained. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But you don't actually have to product it much because of that. If I had longer hair, you'd have to be like,
Back in the day, and this, to your point, there's so many products. There's so many options for men and women. And Greg Gutfeld brought this up a few weeks ago. Never in history has it been easier to be hotter.
Yeah.
Like you can be, it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you look like. There is a way to transform yourself into being hot. And I realized that we were watching women's golf over the weekend, and women's golfers used to be a handsome crew.
Yeah.
It was never, you wouldn't mistake them for Raiderettes.
Fair.
Like our friend Emily Compagno was a cheerleader for the then Oakland Raiders.
That's
so
hardcore.
it used to be like women's golfers were no nonsense, comfortable shoes, baggy attire.
It was Amy Klobuchar. You're using a lot of verbiage to say Amy Klobuchar. Continue.
That's so funny because she looks like what pro golfers used to look like, and now they all look like Victoria's Secret models.
Isn't it something?
Yes, because
the gram.
Anyone can get extensions and lip filler and like great makeup products and leggings and Paige Spiranak, like push-up bras and short skirts. Yeah. And if you have actual ability, like, because it used to be, well, really hot people had to try to find a way to cultivate some ability. But now if you have any natural ability, it has never been easier to be hot.
Amen. And there's this primal motivation to be it because everything is so much more photographed. That's what happened. That's where Instagram really has helped with the self-improvement craze, is everybody knows they're going to be seen now. So they want to, put forth a slightly better product, myself aside. But I think that's my superpower.
Well, you are wearing a very normal jacket today.
You know what? I was just on with Stuart Varney, and I upset him, our mutual friend Stu Varney.
Yeah.
Brian's always on before me on Tuesday. Stu really likes the British bands. So he was like, he bumped in on The Who. And I said, well, Stu, The Who's still on tour right now, but they're a little older. They're singing Who Are You to each other. And everybody on the set laughed, and Stu was concerned. He didn't like it. He laughed out loud, but I could tell he's protective of his British bands. You know what I mean? You can't take, shots at Ringo, But I love Stu. He's the best.
Ringo will be, and I think you can agree with this. And, we all adore Sir Paul McCartney. Mm-hmm. Ringo will be the last Beatle standing.
Yeah, no question.
Because there is no justice in the world.
It has to be that way.
Yeah.
The last two people on Earth, when Earth signs off, Ringo, Keith Richards. Did you tell me Keith Richards isn't going to be here for the finale? They're going to put out. As it turns out, those two have just really wanted to work together since like 1962. And they just knew they had to outlive everybody to finally realize this is their Shawshank. They're going to meet on a beach with a drum and a guitar and crank out some hot tunes from the 60s. I love it.
Do you wish Shawshank Redemption ended different?
Well, in the modern era, it would end different. You want to know why?
Yes.
They'd meet on the beach, immediately take a selfie, and their phones would get geotagged, and they'd go to jail. Yeah. That would be the Shawshank selfie, and it ends with them back in the same damn jail because they had to get some likes on the gram.
Oh, God, I love it so much. It's we were talking this weekend about movies that would be better if they had a different ending.
I love that.
Do any for you come to mind?
I mean, yes, if every single Sex in the City ends with a Jaws shark attack, I mean, I'd say open, middle, and closes with one. I think, I don't mean to reconfigure the segment, but I feel like I have a lot of support for my idea here.
Yeah. Were you surprised that And Just Like That was canceled after 3 seasons?
Oh, and what they did to it, too. Because I wasn't watching it, but I was reading about it. Because they were really just crowbarring a lot of Miranda's agenda.
Yeah.
And she's the worst. I've driven her in my taxi.
No,
yeah,
Cynthia Nixon?
Cynthia Nixon, back in the day, had a friend or a relative. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But they went to a school on the Upper West Side. There was a kid's school at Columbia University. It was called the School at Columbia. Mm-hmm. If you've never been to the school at Columbia, it's every other school. They play all the child games at Columbia, pin the blame on the Jew. It's fun. They do it all up there. And I used to drop her off up there near that school. I don't know that she was going to it, but I used to drop her off a lot. She was such a nasty human being, but to the little people. They say you can tell how people are by how they treat the little people.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm a cab driver getting all my sleep at red lights. I'm really like a broken man just trying to make it work in life, and she was a monster. I drove her 3 times.
3 times?
3 times I drove her.
Oh.
I drove who was great up there? Susie Essman from Curb.
Oh, I love her.
And she
she seems like she's miserable because she plays Susie on the show, and she just Jeff's wife.
Yeah, but she does scream at people. So in a cab, they're your teammate. And she was screaming about another driver that I wasn't even bothered or affected by. And she screamed for 82 blocks about this guy to our right who was doing things she didn't approve of. And she was fantastic.
Oh, that is such a great story. That fills my heart with joy. There is justice somewhere in the world, even if Ringo will be the last Beatles.
It's close. Honestly, it's probably Ringo and Trump. Trump can't be. It's just, there's something going on there. I don't know.
Hopefully Ringo will be singing Yellow Submarine at Mar-a-Lago. show 35 years in the future.
The best.
All right, Jimmy Failla, Fox Across America, you're starting your show in 10 minutes. Thank you for taking the time, Jim.
This was great.
A hero and a legend. Never mind that, Joey Jones. You're the real hero
Let's
today,
talk
Jimmy
about
Failla.
that next time, can we?
Thank you for your service. It's a great book from Scott Barry Kaufman. He is a cognitive psychologist. That means he knows a lot. He is the director of the Center for Human Potential at Columbia University, and he has written several books, 10 of them previously. This is his 11th book. Scott Kaufman, PhD, welcome to the Kilmeade Radio Show.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here.
Isn't this exciting?
Yeah, it's so good to see you. I met you at your taping with Nick Gillespie. I don't know if you remember me.
I do remember you. I'm stoked you're here.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. We all had a good laugh.
So let us discuss the contents of your book, because this is so critical right now, where you have so many people on social media who want to not only talk about their victimhood, they want to live in it. But the strangest thing has happened, because for so long, especially people in my parents' generation, if you admitted that you were suffering from any type of mental illness, and if you sought therapy for it, you were an absolute pariah within and outside of the family. And, you know, there was this mentality that whatever you were struggling with, you had to push through it and not talk about it. So that was obviously a very harmful way to exist for the longest time. And, you know, when people started finally accepting the idea of psychotherapy and, you know, in some cases, psychiatric intervention, things seemed to be moving in a better direction. And there was this openness and the acceptance that we could be vulnerable with one another while still maintaining our identities without shame. But then now we're in an era where victimhood is a way of life, and people want to talk about their mental health crises, but they don't want to get past them. They don't want to find the potential or find the empowerment. And your book is a critical treatise on why one truly necessarily needs the other and the positive outcome in order to have a fully functioning individual self and society. So when did you start realizing this trend that people were profiting personally, not just monetarily, off of this idea of perpetual victimhood?
Yeah, you said a lot of really good things there. When I started studying this scientifically, I started by studying a trait called vulnerable narcissism. And it's not something as well known to most people as grandiose narcissism, what most people think of when they think narcissism. They think, I am entitled to special privileges because I'm the greatest. But I started studying this under the radar kind of form of narcissism, which is I'm entitled to things because I've suffered. Not because I'm the greatest, but just because I've suffered, or I'm fragile. So everyone should walk on eggshells around me and I should be front of the line. One of the items on the actual scientific scale is if I was on the Titanic and it was sinking, I should get the first lifeboat because I've suffered more than everyone else.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I remember reading that in your book. I also remember reading the distinction between vulnerable narcissism and covert narcissism, which was the Taylor Swift branding.
Yeah. But it's the same thing. Like Taylor Swift was citing my research, I think. I mean, probably.
I would like to think so too.
So I started to study that, and then I started to look at some of the data. I talked to Jean Twenge, who wrote a wonderful book called Generations about generational differences, and I started to realize that this is the generation of vulnerable narcissism in a lot of ways. And there's there's a lot of data on this, and I think that you made a quite a good point in stating that it's a good thing that we are open and welcoming to those who are suffering and being able to talk about their pain. But a big point of my book is that we've overcorrected to the point that we don't empower. And so I use the phrase honest love, not tough love, but honest love. So I think we should always start with validation, but don't end there. Let's validate and empower. So yes, something crappy probably happened to you. Tell me your story. I want to hear your story. And you know what? You got this. It's the resiliency part that we're not teaching our young people, and which is what I try to teach at Columbia through my Science of Living Well class.
And how do you find the environment at Columbia, considering what most people know about it, which is, the pro-Palestine protests that have eclipsed pretty much everything else at the school, and it's very easy to portray Columbia as one of these declining academic bubbles, which only encourages socialism and feelings above objective truths. So as a cognitive psychologist and a social scientist and a neuroscientist, how do you exist in an environment if it is feelings-based?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I'm invested in bringing peace to this campus. So there was a New York Times article that came out about the listening tables that I was part of, for instance, at Columbia, where I tried to moderate discussions between people with very different political views. And I can't say it always went well. I mean, as they write in the article, the New York Times report happened to be there the one day. It didn't go that well. Of course, that's what always happens. But, there was... It takes two to tango, and I know that's like such a trite thing to say, but if one person's good faith and the other person is the exact opposite of good faith, you could have the best moderator in the world with all the best intentions, and it's really hard to get a good conversation.
It's the prisoner's dilemma.
You are so smart. Yes, it is the prisoner's dilemma. I don't think anyone has brought that up to me, but that's exactly what it is in a lot of ways. I mean, you need two people to cooperate in a way where even if they completely hate each other, even if they completely disagree with each other, they're like, okay, I'm here to understand. I'm not here to be right. And unfortunately, it's pretty rare these days to find conversations that are honest and loving. Loving in the sense you don't have to love the person. Love, in my view, is a sort of an adverb. It's not necessarily a feeling. It's an attitude where you're like, I'm here to understand. I'm here to see what your perspective is, and that's what I'm committed to. But I can't say it's easiest. Yeah.
No, especially when you have been conditioned to think that the person who has come to the opposite conclusion, although it might not be the opposite, it might just be different. But we have been conditioned to think that those people are bad, that the one objective truth is the person who stands in opposition to what I believe. They are a bad person. I am on the side of truth. They are on the side of evil. And overcoming that, I think, is scary for people because there has to be an admission if it is zero sum. And, it's either everything I believe is completely right. And if it's not, if there are some cracks in my logic, then that might mean that the whole thing would fall apart.
Yeah, and people get really defensive. If you really want to put people on the defensive, ask the question I ask all the time, which is, have you considered maybe there's some bias on your own side? I love asking that question, but that's not a good way of making friends at cocktail
because
parties.
if you admit that, then that's also saying, if you say, yes, I do suffer from bias and confirmation bias, therefore, my argument may be really flimsy. And if it's flimsy, then it is like the Titan submersible that imploded because it was made of an exoskeleton that was susceptible to cracks.
Yeah, but to further that analogy, to end that analogy, I mean, it's all about the context. I mean, there are contexts in which titanium is wonderful. I want a titanium watch, but if I'm putting it underneath the water, that level of depth, titanium was probably not the best decision on the part of the guy who did that. So I just wanted to end your analogy and say, like, I'm a fan of recognizing context, because a lot of things that seem like disadvantages, that's why, for instance, the whole talk about privileges and advantages, disadvantages, I actually think we need a more nuanced discussion of all that, because I think a lot of things that may seem like disadvantages can actually be advantages in certain contexts, and some things which appear to be advantages can actually, in certain contexts, be conducive to mental illness. So I think we just need a more expansive way of talking about this stuff.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's that's an easy way to get entrenched in these issues. And then once you're entrenched, like, you don't want to stick your head up because you don't want to get shot. I do want to move on to how you move out of the victim trench warfare, and how do you find the light and the gratefulness and the gratitude that you write about. And you have a quote from Rumi in here that I love: "The wound is the place the light enters you." So, if people are existing with a gaping wound, saying, "Do you see this? Do you see what I have to live with every single day?" Whereas if you turn it around and say, "Yes, but without that, you would not have the opportunity to examine what's going on and allow the light to enter." How do we get to a point where we are grateful for the experiences that we've had, so we can move beyond them and use what we've been through and move beyond to something that was beyond our grasp before something like this happened, whatever this is?
Yeah, you're asking really good questions. And, that is half of the book. The first part of the book is all about the victimhood stuff and overcoming the ways you get in your own way. But the second half is all about finding the light within. And I think where you put your attention really is where you put your life. Irving Yalom, my favorite existential psychotherapist, said, sooner or later, you have to give up all hope for a better past. And that quote basically encapsulates the point in my book. Yes, terrible things happen, but to all of us, really. I mean, part of being, I have a section in my intro said, "Warning, you might have a case of life."
Yes.
There are a lot of givens of human existence. It's like almost as if some people didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to be happy all the time, and that moments when you feel anxious or you feel upset, it doesn't mean you need to go into panic mode. I think a lot of it is really realizing that there are parts of you that aren't broken. There are parts of you that weren't traumatized. There's a whole science of character strengths. You should take my class at Columbia, The Science of Living Well. I give you open access to my class, Kennedy.
I would love it. That sounds incredible. I mean, I would love to explore some of the things that you're talking about and dive deeper into them, if for no other reason than just to understand this moment and the human condition that we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, we all have character strengths we can build on. We all have deep reservoirs of resiliency. There's a burgeoning field within the psychology research called post-traumatic growth that I am a big fan of, showing that we can actually grow from our traumas in all sorts of ways if we're open to it and able to process what we're doing in a productive way. There's productive rumination, and then there's non-productive rumination. And I want to get people towards a state where I'm not saying forget. I'm not trying to be an a-hole here, right? I'm not saying like forget about your past, just stop complaining. That's absolutely not my vibe. My vibe is like, I feel you, I hear you. And there's so many ways, like you can't change the past. You can't, I mean, as much as we may want to, barring a time machine, we can't do that. So what can we do, given that this has happened, to move forward with hope, agency, intentionality, and compassion?
And I think that is hopefully the next movement where people place their energy, because when the energy is forward looking, you're absolutely right. You're not shutting yourself off from the past and trying to understand it. And that was one of the things that my therapist, Marsha Linehan was my therapist in Seattle in the late 90s. And, that was one of the things, was rumination and going back, in anxiety, when you live in anxiety, going over the same thing over and over again and breaking that pattern to create new ones and to create new avenues of growth. And it's tough. It's really tough when you try and do that in therapy. But when you are in therapy, you are not doing it alone. But, I hope that your book is a beacon for people who have suffered to know that there is something greater that can happen in their future if they internalize some of these principles.
Yeah, it's kind of like yes ending life. That's an improv game, yes and. So for me, I put forward an empowerment mindset. And that's what I want to really help cultivate in people. So it's things like, yes, something has happened and it has affected me and it doesn't define me, would be one of the items on my scale for empowerment. I have deep reservoirs of resiliency within me and can handle difficult situations. We should be teaching people they can handle difficult situations, not that they can handle difficult. I think we coddle too much. There's two approaches I don't like. I don't like the extreme coddlers, and I don't like the extreme pull yourself up by the bootstraps either, really. I like this sort of honest love. As I said, it's a yes and. It's like, yes, context matters. Yes, something terrible happened, and you can handle it.
Yes, I think that is yes, and that is beautifully said. I'm going to go home and I'm going to have conversations with my daughters about, the thoughts that occurred to me as I was reading your book. Again, it is Scott Kaufman, Rise Above, Overcome a Victim Mindset, Empower Yourself, and Realize Your Full Potential, because there's so much there than you ever dare dream. I toured concentration camps and sites of the Holocaust's atrocities in Poland just a couple months ago. And hearing about survivors and their stories, and the justification and the impetus for living after that, it really solidifies what you are saying. And life after incomprehensibility, a good life, is very possible. Scott Kaufman, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.